All right, everybody, we will go ahead and get started. It looks like we have quite a few people joining us today, but I'm very excited. This is our last webinar for this week. We still have 2 more left, but this is the last of our advising and registration webinars. So on Tuesday, we talked about Trinity. Yesterday, we talked about Pratt, and today we are here to talk about pre-health advising. So thank you for joining us. So if you've joined us before, it's the same setup as always. So at the very bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A box with 2 little message bubbles. Feel free to click on that, type in any questions that you have. I'll be moderating the session, so I'll be asking our lovely panelists all of the questions that you post into that Q&A box, and we'll hopefully get you some answers to your questions. For now, I'm going to pass it over to our panelist to introduce herself, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Thanks, Casey. Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Pers. I'm an academic dean, one of the pre-health advisors, and I have a faculty appointment in the biology department. I'm really glad you're all joining us today, hoping to get some of your questions answered. I also want to just lead off with a redirection to any questions that we don't get answered today. Please take those to the Academic Advising Center for Trinity students and the Pratt academic deans. For those of you that are in the engineering school, they can handle all of your incoming questions. The Health Professions Advising Office will start to work with you during orientation week and then pick up working with you from there on out. So thanks for your patience. We are trying to write committee letters for all of our current applicants and just have to put our energy into that right now.
It's a great caveat, and I'll go ahead and throw another one out there. We want to try and keep this as broad as possible to make sure that we have the opportunity to get to everybody's questions. So if you ask a very targeted, specific question, please don't have your feelings hurt if I don't ask it out loud. That might just be a better question for a one-on-one situation. And we'll go ahead and let you know how to get that question answered. But just wanted to throw that out there. All right, are you ready? Okay, first question is, which classes do you recommend taking first semester as a freshman?
Gotta unmute. So just for pre-health students, we encourage you to look at courses in chemistry and calculus. We've got on our website, which is prehealth.duke.edu, a prepare section, and that's found up at the top. And if you drill down into the prepare section, you can find advice about your first class. Both math and chemistry have extensive placement websites. Please use those. Don't just look at the courses and pick the one that looks the best. They've got all kinds of guidance about what's appropriate based on how many years of chemistry you have or math you have in high school, any SAT, ACT scores, and or AP credits you might be bringing in. If you are interested in being a physics major or a statistics major, those might be choices that you make to go into other directions. Pratt, follow the Pratt schedules. You've got some courses in there that will start to meet your pre-health needs. And then of course, everyone needs to do Writing 101, and Trinity students will do a seminar in the semester. They're not doing Writing 101. So that'll kind of help you get started.
Great. Next question is, are all half credit classes taught by upperclassmen or by professors? And I don't know if they're referring to house course.
Yeah, so the house courses are taught between a collaboration between upperclassmen with professors who are expected to have some oversight and occasionally attend the classes. We have lots of other half credit classes that are taught by our faculty, but they would not be in the house course section of the shopping cart area.
All right, next question. Is taking both math and chem first semester doable?
Okay, so that's a good question. It It's fairly common. And this, of course, is coming from the Trinity perspective because math, chemistry, as well as some engineering courses are pretty typical for Pratt. We do advise students in Trinity not to take more than 2 laboratory science or math courses in their first semester. So doing chemistry and math would kind of be at the upper end of what we would advise in your first term.
Great. So the next question is, how many and which math classes do you recommend for medical schools?
So for most medical schools, if you have a semester of calculus, which is just calculus 1, and a semester of statistics, you should be fine to meet the prerequisites. Calculus is not tested on the MCAT, but is needed for all of Duke's physics classes. So you want to get that taken care of before you enroll in physics. And statistics is tested on the MCAT. So you'll want to take that class before you take your MCAT.
All right, next question. This is a little, I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this. It's a little like, depends on the person, but what are considered some of the harder required classes that pre-health students take at Duke?
Yeah, so Casey did a good job anticipating. This is a hard question to answer for everybody. What I hear from students is that the physics sequence is far and away the most time consuming of all the pre-health classes. And I just talked to somebody who finished Orgo and was a little disappointed to hear that it was not organic chemistry, that there was more to come. So it really is going to be a combination of what's your background in these courses like. If you've seen the material before, obviously courses are a little bit easier to manage and master. It's also going to depend on the rigor of your high school. There's just a wide range of variability here. Some students who have been attending schools which their teachers are PhD and they look and teach a lot like college professors. Other schools, maybe couldn't keep a chemistry teacher or your AP Chem teacher left in the middle of the year. So you're just going to have to factor some of those into account. I want to remind everybody, you are all fabulous. You're all in the top 2% of wherever you came from. There's a reason you're at Duke. But when people give you some cautionary advice about placement, don't overplace yourself. Also be careful about underplacing yourself, because if you go into a class thinking it's going to be easy because you've seen it all, and you didn't have one of those high school teachers that teach like a college professor, you could be applying too little effort and really challenged to do well, because in all likelihood, even something you've seen before, the tests are going to be harder than they were in high school. So, follow placement advice. It's based on data of test scores students had coming into the class and what they got coming out the other end. So don't, ignore that and over or underplace yourself wildly. Our chemistry department is really great. They want to push you in down the road and be really nice. But you will have the option, if you leave room in your schedule, if that first organic chemistry exam does not go well and you want to drop back to Chemistry 101, the chemistry department will work with your academic dean to facilitate that. These exams will come after drop ad is over, so you won't be able to shift any other courses in your schedule, which is why you've got to look and see, okay, if I take organic, I'm going to trust chemistry, but I'm also going to know that I can fall back to a lower level if that first test doesn't go well. You've got to have that space open in your schedule. So that's, I think our chemistry department is fabulous at giving people the courage and the confidence to do it. As an academic dean, we do very few reshufflings like this. So I can tell you that trust them. push yourself into that higher level class. If you've got the test scores to go into organic or Chem 110, it's probably a safe bet for you.
Great, thank you. There's a question in the chat. Do many pre-med students also do focus?
Yes, there are awful rumors saying focus is not for pre-health students, but I want to just be really clear. Focus is a fabulous complement to any pre-health coursework you might be doing in your first semester. The pre-health classes are going to be large and impersonal and competitive. In all likelihood, they're going to be taught using lectures. You're going to be graded with tests. Focus is going to be very different. It's going to be a community of scholars and intellectuals. You're going to have time to discuss things rather than just take them in and write notes as fast as you can. Your grades are going to be on papers or reflections or presentations, things that, when it comes to midterm week, you're going to be glad that you've got 2 tests, a paper and a presentation rather than 4 tests or, something that's all the same thing going on. Focus is also really great for helping you to develop mentoring relationships with faculty that can lead to research opportunities. You will also find that in the spring of your first year, you're probably going to need people who can write letters of recommendation for summer programs. It is much easier to get a strong letter from somebody that you have had intellectual conversations with in your class than somebody who all they can write a letter about is they got a B in my chemistry class and my class is really hard, so accept this student. So you need to be building those relationships from the beginning. They're hard to do in your science classes. They're really easy to do in focus. The last thing is some of the most challenging people for pre-health students to work with are their pre-health peers. Duke unfortunately has a really cutthroat reputation in our pre-health classes. This is not helped by the fact that some of our professors still grade on curves. Being in a community like Focus, where you are living together and eating together, you've got an immediate community of belonging. And that will count a lot when you start to doubt yourself in a chemistry class. Chances are you're going to have other pre-meds in your focus cluster where you can talk about like, oh yeah, those pre-meds. And you can talk about them like they're somebody else, but not you, because you're here to do your best. You're here to collaborate, to compete. And, you need to be working in teams and be prepared to work in teams, not be part of this cutthroat competition. If you really want to work on a medical team with all kinds of people with different roles and deliver the best, most compassionate healthcare you can to your patients. So sorry, not everybody can go apply to Focus now, but those of you who are in Focus, stay the course. You won't regret it. It's a great way to begin.
Amazing. I feel like that should be the focus spiel right there. One of the other questions that I see in the chat that we've gotten in both of the other webinars, but do want to make sure that we get to it, is if we don't have AP scores as prereqs for the class that they're planning to enroll in, do they place themselves in the higher level class and then adjust once AP scores come in? Since they come in after registration, what does that look like?
Yeah, so for chemistry, I probably would go whatever you have. Like if you don't have a score now, go into the class that you can take without the score and adjust later. Chemistry is really good about helping students get into classes. They may not let you avoid that Friday lab, and give you the exact schedule you want, but they'll make sure you've got a seat in the lecture and they'll work with you to find discussion and lab classes. Another strategy you could use is, if you know what your scores were like on your practiced AP tests and you think you're going to get a 4 or 5, go ahead and enroll in the class and then adjust accordingly. So it just depends on how much risk you want to assume in having to adjust later. With math, if you are taking a Calculus 1 class like 111 or Math 105, you could put yourself in that. I think you can also put yourself in Math 122 without the AP credit, but I might be wrong about whether that prereq is hardwired. Math, you are gonna, if you're placing into the multivariable level, you are gonna have to have those AP scores posted because these are hardwired. If you can't tell from Duke Hub whether something is hardwired or not, click it in your shopping cart and then try to validate it. If it will validate, you're meeting the prerequisite and you'll be able to enroll. If it comes back with an error message that says, you don't meet the prereq, that means without that AP score, you can't enroll. So I'd go ahead and drop down to the lower level and grab a seat. Math is gonna cause some consternation this year because we will have students placing themselves in the lower level classes that once they get their scores, they'll be able to go from. Math will also not give you a permission number to oversubscribe or over enroll their courses. So the best I can tell you is start attending a class you would like to add from the beginning. They tend to not add anybody who hasn't joined or participated during week 1, and then just hope for the best. But in the meantime, enroll in something else where you can get a seat and then use drop add to make any adjustments if you're able to get one. Hopefully we'll get these all taken care of. There's a lot of students who will sign up for math thinking I've taken math every year of high school, so of course I have to take a math class when I get to Duke. Then they meet their college advisor and find out you do not have to take math to get your QS, or you have got options, and they'll drop these seats and they'll become available. Or students will talk to peers and they'll decide to postpone math for another semester. And I didn't say that when I was talking about chemistry and math in the first semester being doable. You can do one or the other. My general advice to pre-meds is to take chemistry in your first semester because we offer 99 and 110 only in the fall. So you have a few more level choices. So you can postpone math till later. Also, if you want to major in something in QS, it might be more important to start with math. So you may choose to postpone chemistry, but my general advice is to start with chemistry if you're only taking one.
Awesome. There are 2 kind of follow-up questions to that, specifically about AP credits. Who can we contact with questions about our specific situations regarding AP credits? And what is the course placement that, like the placement you had talked about?
Yeah, so if you are looking for math placement advice, just Google Duke math placement and they step you through it. They will also be very specific about if you are looking at this level of math, this is who you contact and how you contact them. I think they have a web form on their site. So don't just email willy-nilly. Math will ultimately serve half of our undergraduates, and very few of those folks are their major. So they have a huge service load. So we got to work with them to help get the advice you need. They're fabulous about helping students make decisions about their individual situations. Same is true of chemistry. Google chemistry placement. They've got a DUS team. Those emails are on their placement website. You'll always get farther with your particular situation if you've read the guidance that they offer to everybody and then write questions that are specific to your situation or how you don't quite maybe meet the guidance, or maybe you meet some criteria but not another and it's unclear. Our other quantitative and natural science departments like computer science, economics, statistical sciences, biology, neuroscience, offer some placement advice too, but they tend to, you either aren't bringing in previous experience and credits in the case of neuroscience. Biology, we kind of encourage everybody to push off till spring at the soonest. So some of these you don't need as much. If you go to the academic advising website, they also have placement for all of these things linked in one place. So if you're looking at several departments where you want to check placement, you can go ahead and look at that. The general rule of thumb is natural sciences and quantitative fields are very hierarchical. So it's important that you read their websites and figure out the right place to start and kind of take the courses in the right order. Social sciences vary a little bit more. Economics is pretty quantitative, so read their placement website. Psychology tends to want everybody to come through a Psych 101 course, so reading their website is useful. Other departments like sociology, you don't need to take an intro course before you take something in the 200, 300 level range. Those courses don't really require much background. So it takes a little while to get a feel. Humanities departments tend to be far less specific about prerequisites. When in doubt, you can always contact the Director of Undergraduate Studies, or the DUS, for the department, or the professor themselves. Just indicate your interest and enthusiasm, anything specific about your background, and your curiosity about whether their course is appropriate for an incoming student.
Awesome. We have two questions that kind of zoom us out a little bit. But I totally lost it. Where'd it go? Okay. What advice do you have for first year students who are on the fence about pursuing pre-health?
I love that question. And the way I'll start to answer it is, y'all are Duke students. You've gone through this massively competitive process to get into college. I have no doubt that you can get into medical school or whatever health profession you choose. You're great intellectually, socially. You've got what it takes. I know that for most pre-meds, there's some anxiety and doubt on that front, but I'm just going to put that out there from the beginning. I think instead, the challenge for pre-health students is you need to spend the next 4 years convincing yourself that that is the right direction for you to head. So that can mean exploring things like shadowing providers. So if you've got a network of health providers at home, reach out to them, see if you can start shadowing this summer. It's always a little bit easier to do that through personal connections than waiting till you get here. Now, COVID has made everything a little bit more challenging on this front. So if you can't find somebody to shadow, you might use those contacts to say, hey, can I do an informational interview with you? Google what that is and come well prepared with questions. I think it's always good to ask what people love and what they hate about what they do, because that is very telling. Ask them if they would do it all over again, and ask them what advice they have for somebody at your stage of preparation. And don't just do this to people in health professions. Any adult you meet, ask them how they wound up doing what they're doing, because those narratives of how does interest and satisfaction, but also random chance and connection, all factor into how they wound up doing. I think most adults are not pursuing something that is as visible as medicine. Two things that I think are challenging about medicine is it's this beautifully well laid out track that people find appealing because a lot of decisions are made for them. But if you just follow it because it's a track, you're not necessarily going to wind up doing the right thing for you. And so, the other thing is it's high visibility, high prestige. There are much better ways to make money than medicine, trust me. But it is one that people see as well compensating. So you've got to be careful what the pitfalls are for medicine. So this all goes back to that question about what if you're on the fence? So everybody should be doing things in the next 4 years to gain some experience in clinical settings. This is not delivering healthcare for most of you. If you're going into PA school, that's the only case where you need to be doing hands-on care. Everybody else needs to be interacting with providers, learning about the profession from them, and volunteering with patients and seeing medicine through their eyes. If you're on the fence, you can postpone taking chemistry or math and explore other things. Sometimes through the exploration of other passions and interests, you'll come back around to medicine. Other times you'll find something that you didn't know existed and you're much happier with and will be much more satisfied by. And then the other thing that I'll say as a way of reassurance is 80% of our students will wind up taking a gap year before they go into the health professions, okay? I would bet right now 80% of you say, I am going straight from Duke into medical school or whatever the professional school is you're aiming for. And you do not want to hear me talk about a gap year. The great news for those of you who are on the fence is that if you come and start this path a little later than some of your peers, you are going to be totally normal because our students are taking time off before they go into medicine. And the most competitive schools, the average is 2 gap years. Again, gap years will, I haven't said it, but gap years will make you more competitive. And so that's why we see the top 25 schools, more than half their students are taking 2 gap years. All right, so you do not have to start pre-health this fall. You can explore other things. And if you come back around to it, our office is happy to work with you and help you figure out the plan. Everybody else who knows they're going to medical school, do not use words like starting late, getting behind, what's wrong with you to your peers, because you are developing a toxic culture that makes people doubt themselves. And you need to get in the habit of supporting people, being compassionate, care with them. Let's all change the Duke Prehealth culture for the better together, and we can start today. All right.
I have one question that kind of goes off of that as well. I'm noticing a couple trends in the Q&A, and it's talking specifically about following the pre-health track or like taking courses in the track. Can you maybe talk a little bit about, and I'm asking because I know in previous years we've created a video and you've talked about the track and what it is and what it is not. So maybe if you can kind of dispel some myths and talk about that a little bit to clear that up.
Yeah, I just, gave our students a hard time for using some of this language. We do it too. It's the shorthand we all use, but
Yeah.
you have to fight against it. So if you go to our website and you look at what are the courses we recommend for going into the health professions, depending on your placement, I think I've counted it's something like 12 to 16 classes for going into medical school. Okay, let's focus on 16 for a second and focus on the fact that we are a 34 credit degree. So that is almost half of your classes. So that means there really is a huge footprint on your 4 years at Duke. If you decide to go to medical school, almost half of your classes are going to be somebody else's idea. And so it really, it's going to be about 2 classes per semester till you are ready to take the MCAT. So there really is this deep rut or imprint on your time here. So that we do wind up falling into this language of a track. And because, again, we're talking about courses that are very hierarchical in nature, there do tend to be times when you take things. Sometimes students will be coming off of physics and they want to take it while it's fresh in their mind. And I tell first years, if you are not majoring in physics, please postpone that. I think I've already mentioned to this group that physics is one of the most time-consuming sequences. It tends, for our Trinity students to be something they're starting late sophomore year, junior year. So you're going to be in an environment, if you take physics early, with much more experienced Duke science students. Every science class you take at Duke, you are going to learn to be a better learner. We don't ask questions that ask you to regurgitate information in most cases. We're going to ask you to analyze, apply, solve novel problems, and there's usually a time limit to it. So, the better a student you are, the better you know the information, the better you understand it and can anticipate some of these tough questions, the better you'll perform. Remember, I talked about competitive environments, grading on curves. So you want to take classes with students that are most like you. That's why placement is really important. That's why taking chemistry and calculus in your first year, biology kind of late or in spring or your sophomore year, doing physics late sophomore year, early junior year, is going to kind of put you in environments where you are competing with folks that are kind of at the same level of preparation. So, there is a track, because you've got to, we're going to guide you to these environments where you can compete. We're also going to help you think about, okay, physics has got calculus prereqs, molecular biology, you need to be at least through chemistry 101. The biologist in me says, try to do some orgo before you get to molecular biology. There is a sequence. So that sort of helps to reinforce this track idea. It used to be that people would apply to medical school at the end of their junior year. So there was this time pressure to pack these 12 to 16 classes in and prepare for the MCAT. I think one of the best things that's happened for pre-health advising and for our students is the year we hit the point where 51% of our students took a gap year. It was like this pressure was off. Students were no longer saying, do I study abroad or do I skip it and avoid a gap year? And to me, these two things are not equivalent. Go study abroad, go have this great, rich college experience that you may not be able to do in the rest of your life, and postpone starting medical school for a year. But it really took that plurality of people taking gap years for students to feel confident. Since that point, the American Association of Medical Colleges has added 4 more courses of content to the MCAT. That is a whole semester's worth of classes. It's really hard to get everything in, especially if you don't come in with AP credits. So here's where I reinforce, if you've got those credits and can place out of classes, you can buy yourself some freedom and flexibility, either with electives or applying after 3 years, if you are courageous and place into those higher level classes. If you don't, give yourself permission to take 4 years or more to get ready. You're going to be in this career for 30 plus years. Yeah, I know the preparation time is long, but I see pre-health students get themselves into trouble with grades or poor MCAT scores, or they're just not putting forth competitive applications anytime they get in a hurry. So if you're hearing advice from adults on campus, wow, that's a really hefty load. The schedule doesn't really seem balanced to me. We are signaling to you, slow it down. Don't be in a rush. There isn't, you cannot run this at a sprint's pace. This is a marathon. And I'm just going to go back to say, spend these 3-4 years making sure that going to medical school or whatever health profession it is what you want to do. If you rush, you might gloss over those things. And I promise you, there's a handful of people that wake up on the other side of residency and go, what the heck did I get myself into? By that time, you've spent at least 7 years after your Duke degree getting trained. You're probably over $100,000 in debt if you're like the average MD, and you're really stuck. So make sure on this side of things, you're picking the experiences that are most meaningful for you. You're not worrying about anybody else and how fast you're doing it. You're doing it at your pace and on your terms. Every time you pick something you care about, you're enhancing your application. You're enhancing your knowledge about yourself and what kind of professions are right for you. So don't shortchange yourself by just spending the next 3-4 years to get into a health profession school. Grow and develop as a human being so that you can be the compassionate, smart provider that we need when we all go see our providers. All right, Casey, did I miss anything about the track idea? All right.
No, that was spot on. All right, we have quite a few questions, and I'm cognizant of time, so I'm going to try and lump some of these if possible. There was a question about is it possible for students that are wanting to pursue pre-health, is it possible for them to major in something outside of sciences? And then to kind of lump with it, there were questions about, when they have the choice between different seminars, should it be science adjacent? Like, should it be something related to the sciences?
Yeah, these are great related questions. So you don't have to major in a science. It's not uncommon. I would guess biology, neuroscience are biological sciences are our most common majors for our pre-health students. Part of that is people who want to work in health, like the biological sciences, so it makes sense for a major. If you major in biology or Avant, it's 6 more classes on top of your pre-health classes to finish your major. Neuroscience is quite a different story. You've got, if you get a BS in neuroscience, it's 12 more classes on top of pre-health. And if you get an AB, it's 10 more classes. So it's still quite a few classes. Major in neuroscience because you love neuroscience and can't imagine doing anything else. For students that major in social sciences and humanities, usually what happens is they wind up with really nicely balanced schedules because they'll do a couple of pre-health classes and a couple of classes in their major or to meet Trinity requirements. So that can lead to good grades. It can lead to great happiness and satisfaction, because if you're a science major, you're usually doing 3 or 4 of these science classes in a semester. So, the social sciences and humanities also have the advantage of you're usually meeting complementary Trinity requirements, so don't have to go out of your way to do those requirements. If you major in a natural science, you're usually, got great overlap between your pre-health requirements and your major, but have to go out of your way to find foreign language and other Trinity requirements. There are a handful, and they tend to be the quote unquote practical majors that are attractive that just don't have good overlap with pre-health or Trinity requirements. So you really have to work hard to fit in things like econ majors, computer science, and public policy to some degree. But every single major in pre-health can go hand in hand. But you've got to do the cost benefit analysis. My philosophy about majors is make a list of everything that will allow you to meet the requirements, categorize them into these are the classes I get to take and these are the classes I have to take. And you want to major in something where your list of classes that you feel like you get to take is the longest it possibly can be, because that's probably the right major for you. 100% of our religion majors will get into medical school. We usually have about 1 a year. So don't correlate religious studies with getting into medical school, but do appreciate that medical schools are going to value that perspective that somebody with that kind of background will bring. And again, they're looking for, do you care what you're spending your time with? And if you do, then you're good. So to pick up the seminar thing, if you're going to be taking a lot of math and science courses, a lot of these seminars do not count toward majors. They're not going to give you unique Trinity requirements. So I usually tell pre-health students, think about where you're going major-wise and look at seminars that, may be challenging to meet Trinity requirements. So typically for our pre-health students, this is the arts, literature, and performance and civilization zone. If you're kind of wary about taking something in those areas, but a cozy first-year seminar designed just for incoming students sounds interesting and compelling, then that might be a really good choice. I would steer clear of them if you can't find anything that sounds interesting to you. Postpone those requirements until later. Figure out what Duke has to offer that can be satisfying and meaningful for you. But again, we're all going to be trying to encourage you to take a balanced set of subject codes, just so you are using your brain in different ways and having to perform and be assessed in different ways. And sometimes a seminar in a distinct area can be helpful.
Great, thank you. Next question is, when do students usually take languages?
Ideally, you'll start fairly early, first or second semester, and there's benefits to this. We have a lot of students that will kind of begrudgingly go into this requirement and discover that, hey, I want to go study abroad in this language, or I want to Duke Engage in a country related to this. And the sooner you have that aha moment, the more likely you are to develop the proficiency you need, make plans to get abroad, and turn something into what can feel like a begrudging requirement into something transformative and meaningful, which is why we have this as part of our curriculum. And then the other thing is we see a lot of students who come in with proficiency at the 300 level, especially in Spanish, but some other languages as well. If you wait too long, you will not be at the advanced proficiency by the time you take it. And so we have a lot of students that, will struggle. So I would encourage you to consider it in your first or second semester. We do have some languages that the 100 level is only offered in the fall. So if you've got too many things going on in that first semester and have to kick it to fall of sophomore year, you may need to do that. But I think the sooner the better is what I would advise. Again, going back to the balanced schedule idea, language is a good way to do that.
Yeah. Is a double major doable if you decide to pursue pre-health?
That's one of those that it depends. So if we think about each major as being about 10 courses, so we're up to 20, another 10 for your Trinity requirements, assuming some overlap, and then another 10 for your pre-health requirements, we're up to 40 classes. So in a 34 credit degree, you're going to have to get some more overlap. I'm going to ask Casey to indulge me because double majors are another one of my soapboxes. Students place more value on them than the outside world does. So if you choose to double major, do it because it's something you want to do. Remember the get to take, have to take analysis. If those major courses feel like get to takes, then this might be the right thing for you. But you are going to have lots of have to take classes in almost every major. So look at those. Consider doing a major and a minor. Consider doing double majors in fields that are orthogonal to each other. It is far more valuable to major in a natural science and a humanities than, hey, I'm going to get a bio advanced double major because there's lots of overlap. You're having to take a few extra requirements to accomplish that, and you're not getting much for it. So who are you kidding? The other thing is they did a study about, do people who get double majors get paid more? They actually got paid less. So a medical school is not going to look at you and think, ooh, you're special, you double majored. They would much rather see you go deep in one major, explore broadly, and become a lifelong learner in a variety of things, and do something like write a thesis in a primary area. If you have multiple interests, I encourage you, if the major and minor doesn't quite work for you, look at interdepartmental majors and program 2. Program 2 is where you design your own major and can do something that we just don't offer already. So those other options can be slightly more efficient ways of kind of accomplishing some of the same goals of a double major, but it's not going to get you in. There's lots of other things I can tell you that are far higher on the list of things that will make you more competitive than a double major.
Awesome, thank you. Next question is, how would you recommend spreading out the pre-health requirements throughout the 4 years?
Yeah, so we've got some sample schedules on the prepare section of our website. So go and take a look at that because that'll give you sort of the general flow. But it's usually comes down to about 2 pre-health classes per semester. And I'm a Trinity dean, so sorry, friends in Pratt. You guys will tend to finish your pre-health requirements earlier just because of the way Pratt sequences things. But for folks, and Pratt's got great schedules for pre-med students on the BME section of their website. So you can see how the few things that aren't BME specific work their way in as pre-health. But I would start with those sample schedules, and then scratch off things if you've got AP Core Edit and are going into more advanced courses. Shift things around if you find yourself enrolling in Chem 99, Math 105, or needing deciding to take a semester where you're not taking any pre-health classes. There's a lot of room to individualize. But one of the things we'll do in early pre-health planning is teach you how to do a 4-year plan that's specific for you. What I like about those is it goes back to that question about double majors. It shows you how much space you have for majors, Trinity requirements, can answer questions about can I study abroad, all sorts of things that have choice involved. But I think it always helps you make better choices if you can see where the decision points are. And so a 4-year plan can really be helpful for revealing some of that.
Amazing. What are some extracurriculars / opportunities you would suggest we explore during our first semester?
Yeah, so there's kind of 3 big experience areas you want to address over the next 3-4 years till you apply. And I always give them in the order in which I think it's easy for students to get engaged. But students will mix things up and do them in slightly different orders. So the first thing you want to do is demonstrate that you want to help people. So doing some kind of community service in your first year can be really important. You can do this through a service learning class. You can do work study with something like America Reads, America Counts. We've got a whole student activities fair early on in the semester. We've got a student organization that's an umbrella organization for service, like Duke Partnership for Service. So get started volunteering. It helps give you perspective on your classes. It helps you feel good. And we are a service-oriented campus, so it's pretty easy to get started. The next tier that really is not accessible to our first years through our formal programs, so you're really going to look at this sophomore year, is to start getting some experience in clinics. This needs to be both shadowing providers and volunteering with patients. You can find other ways to do it outside of our formal opportunities. You're certainly welcome to do that. We've got student organizations like Adopt a Grandparent that go into nursing homes and volunteer with clients. So that's one of my favorite ways to get started. Most people don't want to work in a nursing home, doesn't seem glamorous. I want to go volunteer in the hospital. But I see some of the best reflections about the realities of healthcare come from that experience. So shadowing providers, volunteering with patients is the next bucket. And then the last one is research. Oftentimes it takes some course background, relationships with faculty to get started on this, around your junior year. But I promise you, you will meet somebody who will freak you out that's starting research in their first semester. So that progression I gave you gets turned on its head all the time. But focus on yourself. It's good to ask peers for ideas about what they're doing. It's nice when you can do service that's got a social component with friends. But again, make your choices about things that you care about and are excited about. Don't worry about what other people are doing. They're on their own pre-health journey. There's not a defined track. So be confident in your own choices. If you're making choices that are authentic for you, that enthusiasm is going to come through. It's going to create other opportunities, whether it's related to courses or other things that you do. So be true to yourself and you'll wind up doing the right things. We've got resource guides in that prepare section, how to find clinical opportunities, how to find community service, how to find research, and then tips about what to do while you're doing those. So if there's any particular one you're interested in, go check those out.
That was going to be my follow-up question. You read my mind. Okay, I'm trying to. There are a couple questions that are going back to this math and chem that we talked about earlier. So if I take a chem course my fall term freshman year, when would be best to take the math course? Is taking chemistry and math in the same semester not a balanced schedule? If they wait to take chem until their second year, are they going to be behind? So there's some general questions about that.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to answer all of those, but it's complicated. You can take neither math or chemistry in your first semester, and it's going to be okay. You'll get there. You can take both. It's going to be a demanding schedule. Folks that I encourage to consider not are if you're a math or chemistry phobic, you don't like quantitative classes, you're concerned that, you know, you went to a high school that's just not as rigorous at Duke. You know, you want to give yourself time to utilize services like the Academic Resource Center, go to tutoring, go to office hours. That is okay. Again, this is where you need to pay attention to what's your lane, what's your pathway. Don't worry about getting behind. There's no ahead, behind, there's your path. So I go through this every year with math and chemistry. I do not have a strong opinion about what's the best way to do these. If you come in taking math and chemistry, you're kind of diving into the deep end with two pretty challenging competitive courses. So that's just something to consider, because you want to transition in, you want to make friends, you want to figure out how to do your laundry if somebody else has been doing that. You know, you just don't want to miss out on things that are satisfying and fun. You want to be able to balance your first semester. But your next semester of chemistry, you know, if you take 99, then your chemistry is going to double in size. If you started in 101, then you're going to go into Orgo. So, you know, there's always this step up effect with pre-health classes, that whatever you're doing now, it's going to get harder the next semester. And I read an ethnography with a fellowship I run for pre-health students, and it kind of gets harder every year until sometimes on the other side of residency. So that's sort of the reality you're in. So, you know, just figuring out, you know, do I want to be doing math and Orgo, and what does that do to bio? And so plotting things out in a 4-year plan, talking to current students. So our peer success leaders are doing Facebook pages. You've got to ask multiple people, because if you ask an N of 1, you're going to get one person's experience, and you really want to get the broader experience. You might want to ask, well, what was your high school like? What kind of AP credits do you come in with? You want to really understand who you're talking to, so you can compare it to your own situation. Because if they're like, oh, it's easy, don't worry about it, I'd be a little bit skeptical. If they say, oh my gosh, it's terrible, it's so hard, you know, don't do it. You know, you want to keep asking too, and just get enough opinions to where you feel confident that you're making the right choice for you. I've been doing this for over a dozen years, and I still can't answer when do you do chem and math relative to each other with pre-med, because it comes down to be so individual.
Yeah. I do want to be mindful of time. I have a few questions that, if you don't mind going a little bit over, if that's okay, because I want to get to them. There's one question, and it is asking, can we talk to a pre-health advisor before course registration?
This is your opportunity. Call the Academic Advising Center. They ought to be able to handle how to pick your first 4 classes. And they contact me in the background if they don't know the answer. So they got backup.
That's good to know. Yeah, because there were a couple of questions about what courses do you recommend for like planning your first semester?
Yeah, so we've got 2 handouts on our website. One is the pre-health course guide. I know it says 2020, but it doesn't change that much. So check that out, and then read the pre-health guide for first and second year students. These are at pretty high level under the prepare section of prehealth.duke.edu. And if you read those pretty extensively, they give you all kinds of ideas about where to start.
There's a question about summer courses. Is it common for pre-health students to take summer courses? Are there opportunities for the summer right after freshman year? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so it is not uncommon for our students to take summer classes. Those of you who are in Pratt, you'll see if you start in Chem 101 and Math 111, organic is there after your first year. Other students probably more commonly will take physics in a summer, probably more like after their junior year, maybe sophomore year. So they're not uncommon. They're especially common for students that want to avoid gap years. But, it is a huge number of classes. They're challenging to combine with each other. If you want to study abroad, you do not want to take any of the pre-health classes in a foreign country because med schools won't accept them. There are a whole bunch of compromises and choices. There are some programs that are designed for people after their first year. BSurf is a biologically based research program. The Summer Health Professions Education Program, SHPEP, offered at 12 different medical, dental, other health profession schools nationwide, funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, so they pay you a stipend, is targeted towards students who have finished their first and second years of college. I think Wong Fellows, which is sort of social science research with a health bent, is also designed for rising sophomores. So there are a number of programs where you get one shot at them, or maybe two shots in the case of SHPEP, that are designed for students. Applying for summer programs will be upon you long before you're ready to even think about that. But we'll have a summer opportunities fair. When you get here, you can sign up for our listserv. We advertise all these things. We'll get you thinking about them when you need to be. You're muted.
Oh, that's the first time in all of the webinars this year that that's happened. So it had to happen in one of them. We still have about 25 questions, and I want to make sure that we get answers to things. But I also am very mindful of the time right now.
I start another webinar at 5:30, so I can hang out.
Okay, this might just be a little bit longer, folks. And I don't know which questions are good for rapid fire or not, so I'm just gonna try to breeze through them. Is it doable to take Chem and Bio first semester?
It is doable. You will not be able to enroll in Bio 201, which is molecular biology, unless you have an AP credit for Chem 101. It's not typical. The other thing you cannot see right now, because we're still registering our upperclassmen, is there usually aren't a lot of seats in bio classes, so you may need to come up with another plan. Also, if you have an advanced biology background, biology offers Bio 203, but not till spring. So if you're waiting on an AP score and might be interested in collapsing Bio 201 and 203 into a single class, we'd recommend you wait till spring.
Should pre-med students consider taking Calculus 2 or higher? And then they put in parentheses, Trinity.
Yes, our prep friends will far exceed the minimal math requirement. So the answer to this is it depends on a couple things. One is if you apply to medical schools that require calculus but do not accept AP credit, you will need to take a college level calculus class. These schools are few and far between, but it's probably worth looking at your state schools this week, see what their requirements are, what their AP policies are, look at other schools you might want to apply to, just to get a feel for that. List on our website is truly realistic fiction. It's pretty accurate, but there are always surprises that can come up in requirements, and it helps, especially with something like math, where the longer you wait to come back to it, the harder it will be to remember the math you need to do well in calculus. The other reason why it depends is that it will depend on the major you're interested in. So a lot of the biological sciences, Avant, and biology will accept a combination of Calculus 1 and statistics, but neuroscience wants 2 semesters of calculus. Chemistry has versions that require 2 semesters, sometimes 3. Obviously physics, computer science, these more quantitative fields will require more calculus as well.
Are pre-med students recommended to take Stat 102 for biostatistics over a general stats course?
If you look at medical school requirements, a lot of them express a preference for biostats, but our biostats used to be so uneven. I'm not sure what state we're in right now, but very few students took biostats and they were fine. My general advice is if you have uttered or thought the phrase, I'm going to take stats to get it out of the way, please, please don't do that. You should wait to take stats unless you want to be a stats major. The reason is we've got a variety of stats classes, and departments have no sense of agreement about which stats classes they will count. So for example, our psych department just combined their methods and stats classes. Stats 101 will not meet your needs there. A lot of students haven't had a chance to take a psychology course. They take one in college, they decide they want to major in it. And if you've already gotten your stats out of the way, you're looking at 2 more semesters of statistics. So do postpone this until you have a better sense of where you want to major. Even if you feel confident what you're going to major in, please wait on that. Again, unless you think you want to try out a stats major, there is no reason. You will also get so much more out of statistics if you've had a chance to read some research and you understand why somebody wants you to learn statistics. Stats on the MCAT is not that hard. Whatever stats class you take will help, but med schools have this requirement because they want you to be statistically literate creatures. They're also hopeful that if you engage in research, you'll know how to use statistics, and you'll do all of that so much better if you have some context for it and you're not just getting statistics out of the way, but you're eager and excited to develop this skill set.
Great. There's a question that says, I've heard the credit from BC Calc can expire, quote, after the fall semester. Is this still the case? / could you explain what that means for us?
I have never heard of that. So I don't think it's true, but this sounds like a really great question to take to the math department, or go back to your source and say, what does that mean, that it will expire? It may, again, this is one of those things kind of like the foreign language. The further you get away from that AP experience, the harder it will be to place into a higher level class and be successful. And so I think it's worth a conversation with the advising staff in math just to see what kernel of truth might be in that statement.
Yeah. All right, next we have, do med schools take AP credit? So if we have AP credit for both Calc classes, would you recommend still needing to take multivariable to fulfill the Calc pre-med requirement? Is retaking Calc at Duke an option? Is the second question to that.
Yeah, so the answer to this question is it depends. I think I've used that phrase already. We're going to put it in the HPA office on the wall because so many questions start with that answer. If I were you, I would not take multivariable calculus if worry about medical school taking my AP credit is the primary driver. We literally have students that take the next math class and then are scratching their heads, why did I take multivariable? If you have other reasons for taking multivariable, like your major, then place into that higher level class. I think right now it's worth doing some research about the medical schools where you might apply. And I should give you a number that our typical students apply to 20 to 25 schools. You don't have to look up 20 to 25 schools right now, but go out, start looking at schools. I can tell you, look at Yale, Columbia, and University of Connecticut. These are 3 schools that have not always accepted AP credits in the past. So you want to look first and foremost, do they require you to have a calculus credit, and will they accept it? If they don't require math, then don't worry about whether you have AP or not, you're good. But if they do have a requirement, then check and see if they'll accept your credit. Remember, we're looking at 12 to 16 classes to be prepared for the MCAT and get into a wide swath of medical schools. So anywhere you can use AP credit to bypass intro level classes that you maybe don't want to repeat again, it's worth taking the credit. And for the majority of medical schools, it will work. But there are those schools out there that won't take AP credits in all situations. So it's worth researching it this year. You need to look again next year and the next year and keep doing that until you apply, because UNC Chapel Hill changed their pre-med requirements 3 times in 3 years. I haven't dared look again to see what they've done to them now, just because in all likelihood they've changed them yet again. So it's worth getting on these websites, looking at things, read their mission statements, look at what special programs. You're going to have to write an essay when you apply about why that medical school is a good fit. So these early opportunities to start to get to know them, not only what they expect of you coming in the door, but also what kind of opportunities they hold for you, can be really critical for your getting an interview and getting accepted.
We have a couple questions asking, can you go over, or can you explain the major differences between the different levels of Chem? So Chem 99, Chem 101, and Chem 110.
Okay, so I'm going to also encourage everybody, in addition to listening to me, to pull up that placement page. One, because I may present things that are inaccurate, and two, I may confuse things more than they are already. So Chem 99 is a discussion-based class. This is designed for students that did not have any chemistry in high school and or have a math SAT score 650 or below. And this course will review the concepts in chemistry that they assume everybody is remembering from high school. So if you didn't have chemistry in high school, you need to take this class because it'll have some essential topics. If you went to a high school where you just didn't solve a lot of problems, in all likelihood, your math SAT score is going to be lower than other students at Duke. So word problems often stymie progress for students in our early chemistry classes. They're going to be much more quantitative than your high school chemistry classes. So developing that strong set of problem solving skills is really important. And so that's why your math SAT or ACT scores are relevant there. Chem 101 is sort of where we will assume the largest number of students will place. They will give you an assessment or a diagnostic quiz in both Chem 101 and Chem 99. So if you're worried about what chemistry you have to remember from high school, this diagnostic quiz is going to tell you, you remember enough, stay in 101. You didn't remember so much, drop down to 99. So they're going to start in chapter 9 or so. So some really fundamental stuff they will gloss over in Chem 101, but otherwise it's sort of the general launching point for most students in chemistry. Chem 110 is designed for students that got a 4 on the AP chemistry exam or IB equivalent. And they call this honors chemistry. It's sort of an accelerated form of general chemistry. You will not need to take the second semester of general chemistry on the other end. So you're freeing yourself up from a course if you go into 110. They'll start also looking at some organic biochemistry for interest by the end of the semester. If you have a 5 on the AP exam, then we recommend you start in organic. We have a freshman only section of it. We tell first year students this is to protect you from the big bad upperclassmen, but in all honesty, y'all are the best chemistry students on campus. So we're isolating you to protect the curves for those upperclassmen if we're being real. So, but that chemistry course for first years, if you've got a 5, you're ready for that class. So hopefully that kind of gives you the rundown of the choices. As you can see, it's complicated. It's dependent on your previous experience and test scores. So look at the placement advice. Don't just pick core concepts in chemistry. Sounds like the right one for medical school. No, there's a right one for you. So use those placement guidelines.
Great. And I have one last question for you before we close out. And it is, what services does the Prehealth Advising Office provide for students?
Hopefully you've gotten from the conversation today that getting into health professions is complicated and competitive. If you do not know what schools are looking for and demanding of you, then you are going to possibly put yourself at a competitive disadvantage when you apply. So we have a lot of students that will talk to their friends, they'll figure out the classes, but they won't bother learning about the experiences. They won't bother learning about the pre-medical competencies. And so then they show up in our office ready to apply and they've got some big gaping hole. And then we tell them, you really ought not to apply, you ought to wait another year. And nobody wants to hear that. And we don't want to give that advice because we know how it lands. So come work with us early on. We will help you map out a 4-year plan, help you think about experiences, help you think how major and other choices you might make at Duke will help to make you a unique individual candidate that's attractive for medical school. And more than anything, we're going to boost your confidence and reduce your anxiety. As you get closer to applying, we have a whole curriculum based on advice for application. We will work with you to put together a mock application called a Review My Application. That gets paired with an hour-long advising appointment with us where we help highlight your strengths. We help you figure out better ways to present your narrative. And then we also get to know you so we can write you a committee letter. One of the reasons why we don't have capacity to meet with you guys this summer is because we're writing those committee letters where we highlight all the wonderful, unique things about our applicants. And medical schools tell us this gives our students more interviews because we've kind of helped them sift through everything in the application. So there's incredible value we can serve to you all 4 years, but you got to opt in for the advising and come see us. I especially want to highlight anytime you're feeling anxious, it might be because you got a disappointing midterm grade, or you didn't wind up with a great grade at the end, or you're trying to figure out how to engage with experiences. We're really tuned into how stressful it can be to be pre-health students. We're always going to push you to do the things you need to be doing. I know I've said several times, go look up medical school requirements. Students don't believe me. But sadly, students figure out when they're not meeting them after they've decided to matriculate someplace, and now they got to spend summer before they go to medical school taking some, crummy calculus class or English or, something they're not excited about taking because they really want to take a break before they start. Medical schools only accept 42% of the applicants they get. And so you got to follow the rules. They have all the power here. So we want to help you. We don't want to add to your stress, but we are going to give you good advice about how to do the things they expect you to do, how to be as ready as you can be, and more than anything, how to be yourself and have a great 4 years at Duke. So that's just a quick summary of some of the things we'll do.
No, that was great. Thank you. So unfortunately, we are going to have to wrap this up. But thank you so much for joining us and for staying on a little bit extra and answering all these questions. I know that we had a couple more in the chat, and there were some that we were not able to get to. So please follow up. Genuinely, we mean that. Please follow up. We want to make sure that you have answers to your questions. A recording of this, because I know a lot of information was shared, a recording of this webinar will be posted to the Duke New Student Program's YouTube channel. I'll also be sure to include it in the weekly digest that goes out next week. So you'll have access to the Trinity, the Pratt, and also this pre-health webinar. Yeah, and I'll post the links too that were mentioned and also shared in the chat. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you. And we will see you July 21st, I believe, is our next webinar with Peer Connections. And so we will see you then. Bye all.
Thanks everybody for coming.